Dodgy flights, illegal helicopter transfers, secret dockings. Once again, South Africa finds itself in the headlines for all the wrong reasons. A blacklisted Russian-linked aircraft lands in the country under mysterious circumstances. Days later, reports emerge that Gazelle military helicopters, yes, combat aircraft, have been exported to a Libyan warlord in Benghazi, of all places. And while the nation is still digesting those revelations, a new commission of inquiry begins, hearings into something even darker. Claims that senior politicians, police officers, prosecutors, intelligence operatives, and even judges have colluded with organized criminal syndicates. This goes as far as allegations of attempt to cover up political assassinations. Now, before we continue, I need to encourage you to subscribe to this channel right now. It is important to us to breach the 100,000 subscriber mark. This channel has had significant growth since the beginning of this year, and it will continue to grow. Yet, we need to breach the 100,000 milestone as soon as possible, as our plan is to shift the emphasis slightly in 2026 by getting more renowned international guests, but only once we have surpassed the 100,000 mark. The Madlanga Commission of Inquiry, which is now underway, was prompted by allegations from the KwaZulu-Natal Police Commissioner Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi. He testified that the then Minister of Police, Senzo Mchunu, ordered the political killings task team to be shut down, a move that Mkhwanazi suggested was designed to protect powerful political interests and criminal networks. At face value, having a commission sounds like progress, but we have seen this pattern before. Between 2018 and 2022, the Zondo Commission exposed the anatomy of state capture in South Africa, a web of collusion linking politicians, state-owned enterprises, and business elites. The Zondo Commission sat for 429 days of public hearings, heard testimony from over 300 witnesses, and reviewed more than 1.7 million pages of evidence and documentation. In total, about 1,438 people and entities were implicated in its findings. That's right, nearly 1,500. These include some of the country's most senior politicians and officials, including Jacob Zuma, Zizi Kodwa, Tomoyane, Dudu Myeni, Nomvula Mokonyane, Gwedi Mantashe, and Lynn Brown. Of these, roughly 200 cases have been referred for further criminal investigation by the National Prosecuting Authority and other bodies. Yet, so far, only 4 convictions have been secured, all involving lower-level officials, and in all cases, the sentences were wholly suspended. In other words, after one of the most extensive and expensive inquiries in South African history, costing approximately 1 billion South African rands, no senior political figure has yet been convicted for state capture. The same figures re-emerge in new scandals, merely reshuffled within the hierarchy. So, what should we expect from the Madlanga Commission? Likely, it would be the same pattern. Revelations without retribution. Reports without reform. Because in South Africa, commissions have become a substitute for justice and a mechanism to defer accountability, to absorb public outrage, to delay action, and to buy time. The irony in all of this is unmistakable. While the state claims to be rooting out corruption within its police, prosecutorial, and intelligence structures, it conducts foreign military deals cloaked in secrecy. Take the Lady R incident of December 2022. A sanctioned Russian cargo ship docked at the South African naval base in Simonstown. Its transponder was switched off, its cargo was loaded or offloaded, Under the cover of darkness, the US ambassador publicly accused South Africa of secretly supplying arms to Russia. Pretoria denied it, claiming instead that it was merely taking delivery of an old ammunition order. An inquiry was announced and an executive summary was released, but the full report remains classified. The secrecy was never explained, the allegations never truly answered, and to this day, the Lady R affair stands as a symbol of how the state hides behind national security to shield itself from scrutiny. Now, with the Russian aircraft and Gazelle helicopter transfers, that same pattern repeats itself. The transponders are off, the paperwork are opaque, and the explanations are contradictory. At first glance, these stories might seem disconnected. A corrupt police network here, a suspicious docking there, but in truth, they form part of the same design, a political system in which secrecy is structural, criminality is systemic, and accountability is performative. And so let's examine what these scandals actually tell us. And I want to share 8 observations with you. The first is that government involvement with criminality is endemic. Corruption in South Africa is no longer an aberration. It is a governing method. From the Zondo Commission's findings to the Madlanga testimony, we see clear evidence that sections of the state in policing, intelligence, and justice are now intertwined with organized crime. It is visible at every level, from traffic officers soliciting bribes to senior officials facilitating multi-million rand rackets. The line between governance and criminality has blurred to the point of invisibility. Power no longer serves justice, it shields itself from it. The second is that secrecy is structural. The Lady R inquiry, the mysterious aircraft arrivals, the helicopter exports, the sealed reports, all of them share the same feature: concealment. Transponders switched off, hearings closed to the public, critical documents withheld under the excuse of secrecy. So what should be exceptional secrecy has become normalized opacity. In a truly accountable democracy, secrecy is the exception. In South Africa, it is the rule. The third is that institutional checks and balances have been captured. When South Africa's democracy was founded, the Constitution promised a balance of power. Parliament would oversee the executive, the courts would remain independent, the press would remain free. Several institutions created by the Constitution would ensure transparency and accountability, and so forth. But decades of state capture, cadre deployment, and bureaucratic decay, all of which were facilitated by a highly centralized system, have hollowed those safeguards into formalities. Oversight committees meet but achieve nothing. Reports are written and then get shelved, and we never hear from it again. The institutions that were meant to restrain power now legitimize it. Back in the 1990s, a fear was expressed that the country might suffer from the tyranny of the majority. That would not be an accurate description of the crisis in South Africa, as it is not the majority that is terrorizing the people. It is a small political elite acting at the expense of the majority. South Africa does not have a tyranny of the majority. It has a tyranny of the political elite. This is why South Africa should much rather be described as an oligarchy than as a democracy. The fourth is that power is both concentrated and isolated. In a healthy constitutional order, power is shared and answerable. In South Africa, it is concentrated in the hands of a small executive elite and isolated from the people it governs. Decisions about arms deals, foreign alignments, and intelligence operations are made in secrecy, insulated from local deliberation or provincial consent. The result is a paradox: a state that is powerful enough to conceal vital information, but too paralyzed to deliver any tangible action. The fifth is that accountability is non-existent. Since 1994, the list of major corruption scandals has grown so long that it is hard to keep count. The arms deal, state capture, PPE procurement, Eskom, Prasa, Transnet, and now Isolweni, and more. Each new scandal follows the same choreography: outrage, investigation, never-ending legal disputes that go nowhere, reports, and no consequence. Officials hide behind procedure and commissions become theatre. Accountability is invoked as a slogan, but not practiced as a principle. The sixth is that legitimacy has evaporated. Each secret docking, each hidden report, each mysterious flight erodes what little public trust remains. The hype of the new South Africa is over. The belief that South Africa is a miracle is long gone. Citizens have concluded that the promises made during the 1990s were false promises. Those in power serve themselves, not the public. Meanwhile, voter turnout plummets, participation shrinks, cynicism grows, and people tend to alternative solutions. A government can survive without popularity, but it cannot survive without legitimacy. When legitimacy dies, fear becomes the only glue holding authority together. And this is largely the case in South Africa today. Even though we see and hear a growing amount of voices in the private sphere that calls out destructive policy ideas, it is not an exaggeration to say that the only thing holding this government in power is the increasingly reluctant compliance of taxpayers and big corporations. The seventh is that decisive action is punished while silence and cooperation is rewarded. In today's South Africa, whistleblowers are persecuted and sometimes even murdered. Reformers are sidelined, and those who comply or remain silent are promoted. The system self-selects for blind compliance. The message is clear: speaking truth against power is career suicide. The bureaucracy learns that inaction ensures survival, and mediocrity becomes the safest virtue. People of character leave, and people who cannot act or think for themselves stay behind in positions of power. And the eighth is that the crisis is systemic. All of this points to one conclusion: the crisis is not about a few corrupt individuals. It is about the structure of the political order itself. A centralized system that places moral restraint and fiscal control in the same hands cannot restrain itself. It rewards opacity, it punishes initiative, and it survives only by consuming its own credibility. To treat such a disease with another commission of inquiry is the equivalent of prescribing aspirin for organ failure. And this is exactly why Lex Libertas was founded. If secrecy, capture, and impunity are woven into the fabric of the centralized state, reform cannot come from the top. It must come from the ground up. The solution is self-governance. In other words, to put it bluntly, we need to change the political system in South Africa through our actions. We stand at a moment where multiple scandals converge: the blacklisted Russian aircraft, the Gazelle exports to Libya, the secretive Lady R docking, the revelations of the Zondo and Madlanga hearings, and the list goes on. These are just a selection of scandals, but we can keep naming them. Each of these exposes not merely misconduct, but design, a political order built to self-enrich and conceal. No new commission, no presidential panel, no advisory council will fix a system that is designed to hide the truth, designed to ensure that there would not be accountability. What South Africa needs is structural reckoning, a new architecture of governance rooted in community autonomy, lawful transparency, and shared accountability. That is the mission of Lex Libertas, to restore a viable political order, one that cannot hide from its citizens, one where power is dispersed and justice is local. If we fail to insist on this transformation, South Africa will remain a democracy in name and an autocracy in practice. But if we begin to rebuild from the ground up, community by community, structure by structure, we believe that the torch of freedom can still be rekindled. The time for commissions, investigations, and public assurances have passed. The time for reconstruction has arrived.